A super simple mistake to make is to chamfer or miter this before you put in the diamond chisel. I've made the mistake, and it just makes it really hard to go straight down, and very easy if you have any wavering on that edge to punch out if you didn't keep a nice crisp edge there. So before we get ahead of ourselves, we're going to start laying this out. And so I'm going to line this up at the corner and make sure my chisel, essentially my fork, is vertical and pound it in. It helps to have a sacrificial piece of wood or several pieces of sacrificial leather underneath of it, because you don't want to lose the sharpness of this, as that will make future use of it super challenging. I just have a typical hammer. I hate the chiming noise that metal on metal makes, so I definitely wear hearing protection. It's where I still have a little bit of room to grow in my tool collection, but it works, so we're going to stick with that. So I'm going to start out here in the corner, making sure I'm staying perfectly centered on this groover line. Great, and then I'm going to overlap 2 of those stitches, getting my fork back in the center of that groover line. Get a few tools off this cart that might rattle. Overlap 2 forks, centering. It's starting to get close to the center point, so I'm going to come over to this side. And then that way I can make sure my hole spacing gets centered at the very end. And by overlapping 2 stitches, it really helps you keep that line nice and straight instead of getting tipsy as you go, because it gives you a better reference of where you've been. You can see that my forks don't match up perfectly. So I decided to get out the 2, and I'm going to just make sure they're evenly spaced, that I'm on that line. Great. So you'll see that my stitch holes are super close and then even slightly touching the geometric design. And that's because I didn't follow the advice that I just gave of not doing your chamfer or your miter on the underside. And I had a lot of wobble when I did it, and so I had very little room to do the stitch on my line without running out on the edge here. And so I just decided to cut it off and do it again. Now I'm going to go ahead and rotate over in this direction. So I know that that's what the layout of the stitch should be. So I'm going to raise this up, press it in, And then I'm going to actually let myself move up by 1 stitch so that I don't change the orientation of that lower one. Put my hearing protection back on. It's right there, went off that bottom mark. Put my bottom diamond there. Overlap by 2. Now I'm going to overlap by So if I overlap by 3, that kind of gets me to be a lot of space at the top. But if I overlap by just 2, I worry about punching out there at the end. So I'm kind of mentally coming up with a plan. A lot of times I like to kind of put a fork right there. And what would be the very top. So how about I imprint that. Then I'm going to do just a spacing of 1 in between those 2 and get it dead center. So again, it's line spacing up. Mark them. Move the fork forward 1. Okay. Fork is there. All of these used to have a green band. They come off super easy. And that's just to mark the size that they are. And this one again is going to be right in the middle. Great. Now we get a chamfer this edge. Now we're going to go for a bigger challenge. I have already mitered this. But I'm going to try to still use it. The nice thing is that I didn't really come off my line, so I have a nice consistent reveal. I'm also going to kind of safeguard myself and kind of angle my chisels a little bit off of 90. just a little bit. And now that I'm in the hole, I can straighten up. Okay. Starting off 90. It's sort of like drilling into a dowel. You kind of got to go not straight on to start with so you don't slip off. And then once you've punctured the skin, the hide, then you can go vertical. Angled. It's always nice to not mess up, but hey, there's ways out of that. Starting out in the corner, the two lines come together. I'm going to make sure I'm not at 90. Once I've gotten through the top layer of the hide is when I go to 90. So I did a hole from both directions, a little dot, so that way I could put my little chisel in between the two. There we go. Holes punched. Overcame the miter. Time to start sewing. I'm making these flat pack kits available to all, so click the link below and find out how you can buy one for yourself or give it as a gift. Definitely make sure to follow along, as I've created a whole video series on step-by-step instructions on how to make these leather planter pots.